Welcome to Momentum Magnet, a podcast to inspire your growth. I'm Karen Morales, and your host in helping you find ways to make positive changes for your business, health, relationships, and life. We always have a path to a happier ending, so let's get started today. Hi, this is Karen Morales. Welcome to Momentum Magnet. Happy Friday. We're here every Friday to talk about change, how to make it in your life, how to make it in your business, how to help your relationships. But before we start today, I really wanted to ground us in some national news that's happening. Today is August 28th, and we're going to have the largest march for civil rights in Washington that we've had in the last 5 or 6 decades. And I think it's important today as we frame a lot of our conversation with Amanda later about mutual understanding and respect. And something that's come up for me a lot this week is, why is this country so polarized? Why have people taken such corners with what feels like rabid anger? And I posted something this week on Facebook on my personal page that sort of cemented this entire chasm in the United States. And as the dialogue was going back and forth and people were balanced between relatively nasty and collaborative, I started to ask myself the question of why. Why have we gotten to this place today in 2020 in what is arguably one of the hardest years we've experienced in our lives? Why is there so much charge? And I think it's a good setup for today's conversation. Because when people feel like they're not being heard, they will scream. If you have a toddler who wants a sippy cup that's blue, they will throw it. If you have a person in a romantic relationship that feels unseen by their partner, they could stomp their feet, storm out of the room, or give you the silent treatment. And I think what's happening today in American society is really that we have to get back to the roots of this discussion and understand that equality needs to matter to all of us. The question I kept coming back to when I was thinking about how to even broach this pretty hard topic in my emails to my community, in my outreach, and even on this podcast was really, can we all agree as individuals that we are always judged on our appearance first? I mean, to me, that is just a logical fact. I would have a really hard time hearing from someone who doesn't agree with that sentiment. And if we're always judged first on our appearance, then of course the color of our skin would be one of those ways we are judged. If the color of our skin or our appearance could cause unfair actions with the police department, I think we should all be interested, curious, and wanting to solve that challenge. So today, before we walk into this very important conversation about parenting, I want all of you to spend some time thinking about that question. I think we can all agree as Americans that judgments happen and that there are definite ways we can work towards those judgments. Don't add violence, death, destruction, and murder to our society. So with that little bit of a setup, I want to change topics and I want to introduce today's guest. And Amanda Houle is here to talk to us about positive parenting. And when we talk about positive parenting, we're also talking about communication. We're talking about expectations. We're talking about framing shared understanding with the people who live in our homes or who we relate to on a daily basis. So Amanda is an educator. She's worked in with families almost as a nanny 911, I would almost say, to help families in Massachusetts, and in the start of her career in New York City, really understand how to create more peace and more balance and more understanding in their homes. She's a yoga coach. She's a mindset expert, and I'm psyched to have her here because I know her personally as she helped us restore peace and balance in our own home. So Amanda, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Great. So I think, I know I started this episode in a totally different place, and I started talking about, I think we had to talk about the fact that today is the largest, civil rights march on Washington in decades. Mm-hmm. And it's an important place to start, right? When we're talking about any challenge people face in their life, whether it's parenting, relationships, health, or racial equality, a lot of times we have to start with a shared sense of understanding. So I think one of the things that you do so well in your parenting practice is you really help parents understand the view of the child, and the child understand the view of what's important to the parents. And you distill it down to basics so that everyone can start from a place of, shared knowledge so that it doesn't become so overwhelming. So talk to us a little bit about how that process works for you and what you do in your work with families and kids.
Yeah. So, it all comes to when I help parents, of course, essentially I'm helping the kids. So it always comes back to the kids. The kids for me are the number one. I just have such a huge passion for working with children and really just educating parents how to relate to their children, because there's no manual, right? Parenting is not easy. You don't know what you're going to get as far as the personality of the child that you're raising. And look, the way I look at it is, if you don't have a background in, let's say, child development, it doesn't even necessarily have to be education, but if you don't have a background in child development and you don't understand necessarily the social emotional development, or you don't understand the psyche and cognitive development, again, the social emotional, I think it's really hard for parents to kind of relate and understand. So like you mentioned, is really teaching the parents how to kind of understand where the children are coming from, more so from a developmental perspective, if you will. Because kids, they want to make you happy. They're not intentionally malicious and want to, upset you. I know a lot of parents feel like, when children act out, that it's intentional and that they're trying to be malicious on purpose. But, a lot of times children don't have that emotional regulation, and it's up to us as the adults, as the parents in their lives, to really teach that. You can't meet a child that's having a hard time with an adult tantrum, if you will, because it just doesn't. You go down to their level, and it doesn't work.
I think something that you said in there is such a great reframe for parents or anyone having a challenging relationship in their life, right? Mm-hmm. Oftentimes there's two people with diametrically opposed views of the other group. And that segues perfectly into the setup of the conversation I had at the beginning of this call, right?
Yep.
It's this idea that I have labeled you as something, mm-hmm. and my view is finite. And I have labeled you as something, and my view is finite. Right. And in our own self-regulation, whatever definition we've given to the other person is unacceptable,
right,
for our rules of being. Mm-hmm. So talk to me a little bit about, you entered a home, and I'll talk about this even personally. I have a very spirited child who's been very spirited since the womb. Mm-hmm. He's now, one of my favorite people in the entire world to talk to. But he was really, really challenging as a small human. Mm-hmm. And there were moments in time where I asked myself pretty terrible things as a mom. Is he a sociopath? Is he here literally to end my life? He's that hard. The pediatrician, when I asked this question, she didn't even look at me crazy. She's like, I can see why you'd say that. He just threw a chair at you in the pediatrician's office, but I'm struggling. But I guess, how do you actually start a conversation when you've got two people in the opposing camps on the field labeling each other? Mom's unfair, child's badly behaved. How do you start that place? What's the first step?
Well, I think the first step, I think, would be just to kind of recognize and sort of, know, as you sit down as like a team, right, with the parents and the child, and letting everybody know that we're here to work together as a team, and that things aren't working, and that we're trying to come together so we can have more harmony, more happiness in the home. Because when mom's happy, child's happy, but and that's just real, because children feed off of our energy all the time, 150%. So I'd
important lesson. The first step, if you want to make progress in a life battle, is to put your guns down, right? Put it down and come to the table with an open heart and an open mind, because people feel it. So number one step, your starting place needs to be, we think we can do better, and we're both open-minded and flexible, that we will be open to change to get there.
Right. And we're going to work together. So like, we're going to hear from the child and where the child is having that struggle and how they feel. And I think me just naturally having that gift, being able to, help the child feel comfortable to be able to talk about that. Because a lot of times, what I hear from families is that you don't know what's going on with the child, because they're not opening up to you. It's hard to get them to even like communicate and verbalize what it is that's going on. So you hear from the child, you hear from the parent, and then, we come together. I'm sort of like I don't want to call myself the mediator, but like, I'm really there to help bridge that connection, to get everybody back on the same page and working together as a team, and recognizing that, look, like, yes, we understand that the child, is having struggles, and they're having a hard time, and they're acting out. And, mom or dad is getting frustrated, understandably, because there are certain rules, in your home that you should, abide by. Right. But a lot of times I think parents, they kind of forget about the rules, and they kind of get, they kind of go out the window, because you're just trying to survive in those moments of frustration. So I think just starting there, and then from there, just depending, of course, on the dynamics and what's going on, whether it's working with the child individually, giving the parent, working with the parent separately, on certain strategies, once you hear more about what's going on, again, like specific situations, and then, and then still being able to come back together as a team and kind of working through, like, how are we going to do this together? Like, what are you going to do? What am I going to do?
A shared goal is really something that you're hitting on.
Yeah.
So I think, I talk about this a lot in business when I do marketing consulting with companies. It's that you can't fix everything day one, right? No. So the first step that you have to take is what actually is most important for our collective success.
Yeah.
And I know that's something we did together, was really look at what the child thought was broken, what the parents thought was broken, and collectively decide where would be the best way that we could agree to focus first.
Right.
So that it felt fair and equitable to everyone. And it's not to say that, I'm sure people are listening and thinking like, well, you're going to put a 7-year-old in charge? Like, that's not the way this works.
Yeah.
But I think that what you do is everybody wants to feel valued.
Right.
And heard. Mm-hmm. And if you're starting from an authoritative perspective, and you've been doing that for years, and it's not working,
it's not going to work.
It's not going to continue to work.
It's not going to. Yep.
Some children are wired for self-ownership and manage being the captains of their own ship, and they won't lay down the sword no matter what you do until they feel a little more part of the process, which I learned from you quite mightily.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing is, especially for those high spirited, high energy, emotionally charged, I guess, if you will, sensitive children, if you will, they come out of the womb and they are like automatically like they want to be their own person. They have a very strong personality. And those really, I strongly believe that those are going to be our future leaders of the world. And that's really what we need, because we need more people. We need more individuals that are taking ownership and really just owning and that's why it's up to us as the adults to be able to help them manage those emotions, because they're already so strong-willed, and like they want to be able to be independent. And that's really what they're telling you. They just want to be independent, and that's okay. Children you're supposed to be independent, starting off from a very young age, but they still have to know limits, and they still have to have expectations, because they're just going to run wild if they don't have that sort of structure, or every child of course functions differently, but if they don't have that guidance and they don't know what's to be expected, then it's going to be really hard for them. Because again, what I've also noticed is with these kiddos that are just very strong-willed, a lot of times their sensory nervous systems are also kind of coming into play a lot of times. And that is like a whole other, that's like a whole other ball game. But in essence,
have almost like texture fixations, or they're like, explain that a little more.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, it could be like a myriad of different things. So like when I say sensory, yes, it could be texture when it comes to like food, clothing, noises. But it also could just be like, I'll give you an example for a child that might just be emotional, right? Is they learn. So I'll give you my niece. My niece just turned, she's a little bit over 3, literally since like probably a little bit over 1. I knew it. I was like, she's very strong-willed. Like I could tell. I was like, they're going to have it in. And she is she is constantly like labeling or naming her emotions. Like, I'm mad at you. I'm upset with you. That hurts my feelings. And that's great. We want to be able to teach her how to do that. But when she gets upset, she gets overregulated. So her nervous system. So if she gets upset because she doesn't get something that she wants, right? Which is a lot of times what we see in all ages with kids. They get upset. When they don't get what they want, they might throw a temper tantrum. They might get upset, start crying, throwing things, whatever that looks like. A lot of times with the sensory nervous system, they're getting that sensation in their body already. So a lot of times when you see a behavior, you're experiencing a form of anxiety. And anxiety, a lot of times you feel it in your body first. But if you're not aware of your body, you're not going to necessarily know that you're experiencing anxiety. Especially as a child, we don't really know what anxiety is. So a lot of times you might feel like, your stomach might be upset, right? Because you're upset, or you might start to get like a headache, or your face is getting hot because you're working yourself up. Once they've gotten to that point of like no return, they're not able to calm themselves down without an adult that's able to help teach them how to regulate, because they're not able to articulate or verbalize what it is that they're feeling, because they've already like gone past that level. So sensory
whole thing, right?
Yeah.
I should stop there and just apply. Having lived on both sides of this equation, like
right.
People actually understood it, and after, these children have emotions that feel like they're too big for the circumstances.
Right.
And it's very easy as a parent to say, you need to calm down. There is no reason that this cup color or the way that we've cut your carrots demands this level of crazy town.
Right.
But at the same time, as they grow through these experiences, and now I'm seeing in the like preteen era, the ability to actually describe their own emotions and understand and perceive how others are feeling is truly remarkable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as a parent, what is so important to do, took me many years to get here, is to realize that these little humans can be a true gift, a true teacher.
They are.
Better understanding, right?
Yep.
Yourself and others. I mean, but it's hard in the moment. Really hard in the moment.
Extremely, extremely hard. It's and understandably, because I think, and you just said it, that they end up being our teachers. Like, I do strongly believe that children pick us to be their parents, and they come into this world to teach us lessons. So like, for those parents that really have a hard time, relating, or just, getting frustrated, or lack of patience with their child that has those big emotions and that big personality, then, I mean, really, like, they're teaching you how to be able to
handle your own.
Right. And
be okay.
I mean, I can't tell you how, like, that, I see that all the time, with every single family I work with.
It's a really interesting dynamic, because that just gave me another aha moment. I mean, I grew up in a family where you didn't really talk about feelings.
Right. Same.
You need to be polypositivity at all times.
Right.
And you don't ever stay upset, and we don't really want to hear about it. We want you to move on.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't really my natural instinct. I'm a very highly emotive person. If you do any of those, from astrology tests to Myers-Briggs, I'm a truly emotional human.
Yep.
But I felt for many years I needed to move the emotion out of me, right?
Right.
And then I have this child who is charged up like an electrical switch.
Yes.
Real tough, right?
Yep.
For some years, I was like, who is this human? This is beyond. And now, looking back, I can look at, wow, what a gift, because he enabled me to find my own feelings, to learn how to express myself in more positive ways,
right?
To be more thoughtful and mindful of my own energy field.
Yep.
And it makes a huge difference.
Yes.
I think one of the things that you told us early on was how these sensitive children can feel what is unsaid.
Mm-hmm. They do. It's, yep.
And I think there was a period of time, I mean, it's embarrassing to admit, but I know a lot of moms have been here, so I'll say it. I think there was a lot of times where he probably felt my frustration every time I looked at him. Just like, you're here to cause like stress and havoc on all of our lives.
Right.
And since we've gotten through this past, and we've had many emotional conversations since working with you, we are much better able to regulate and de-escalate any situation, because we call each other out on, I see that you're getting angry. I can feel it.
Mm-hmm.
And he'll tell me now, I don't feel like you're really listening to me the way that I want you to.
Right. And that's huge. How he's 12 or 13 now. How old is he?
11.
He's 11. Okay. Yeah. For an 11-year-old to be able to say that I mean, that's huge. This is what we want. We want emotionally intelligent children, because think about it, when they go into the workforce, look at what's going on in our world right now. It's really important. And that's empowering as all heck for him. I mean, for him to be able to communicate that and to hear his mom be able to like really hear him, like that's huge. That's really huge for him.
It is interesting. It's been an amazing journey. And I want to switch for a parent that doesn't have a highly sensitive child at home, because maybe I think they're maybe 10 or 15%, maybe 20% of the population.
Right.
It's a smaller amount. What about the other children? My other child tends to be very calm and very even keeled, and she's never really explosive.
Right.
But she tends to keep her emotions inside. Yeah. And I think as I've grown through this experience, now that is my next
that's your next
right? That's the next hurdle was how do you coax somebody who doesn't want to share or talk about their feelings to do it? And how do you make that welcoming in a home? Can you talk a little bit about the other side of the equation?
Yeah. I mean, I think first off, it's really important to just kind of like honor or sort of like recognize that that's who she is. And just, I think for a child that is, I mean, she's sensitive in her own way, right? Because she doesn't feel comfortable yet opening up about her feelings or emotions. So she's still sensitive in her own way. But I think just honoring the child and just like letting them know that it's okay, to be able to talk about things and sort of just kind of open up that dialogue, like not be pushy, but just sort of, let them know, that it is okay to talk about. And then maybe sort of, maybe there's somebody, maybe you can recommend, somebody else. And I'm not saying necessarily a professional, but maybe there's like a family friend or just somebody that maybe they feel like that they could maybe talk to or open up to. Or maybe you suggest that they start journaling. I think journaling is a big thing. And that will help them sort of release. And then maybe once they start writing things out, then maybe they'll, gain that confidence to be able to talk about it.
Do you see that a lot though? Do you see in the families that you work with that have more than one child that often they'll have, a spirited child and then a child on the other end of the spectrum to almost the yin and the yang?
I feel like I do. Yeah. I mean, if I could think about like every single family that I've worked with, every child is of course going to be so extremely different. And then I think it also depends too on if the child that's more high spirited is older or younger, because a lot of times the younger children are modeling, what their sibling has done. And it could be the exact opposite, right? So like, maybe because there was such a huge focus on your son at, for a moment in time, maybe because she saw sort of what was going on, maybe that kind of caused her to kind of hibernate a little bit, if that makes sense.
No, I think it does. I think that there's an inherent challenge in that, right? If somebody in the family is labeled or categorized as the challenging one, then a lot of times another person might feel they have to take on the persona of the easy one.
Right.
I think that's a very hard
dynamic.
Or dynamic to live up to. And it's something that I'm mindful of. Even as we talked about this for the first 10 minutes of this podcast, I said, oh my gosh, I'm talking about him again. We can't do that all the time. As parents, we have to remind ourselves that, not always the one who is crying the loudest that needs the attention.
Exactly. And sometimes it's those that are super quiet, that are the ones that are really hurting inside, and they just need that, they need that open vulnerability to be able to share. I obviously it just really just depends on the situation and, the dynamics of the family. But it is very beneficial, of course, for that child to hopefully be able to have somebody that they can kind of open up to, or just try and find other ways to help them to express. So starting with journaling, maybe meditation, which I know is hard for a lot of families, but
journaling and meditation are two wonderful life skills, right? And something us as adults to do. Mm-hmm. So changing gears a little bit and thinking about, we're in the year of 2020. Mm-hmm. If you have had a parenting challenge in your house, it probably came to a head this spring.
Yes.
In the house. Mm-hmm. Must have been, Amanda, you got a lot of phone calls. So one of the questions that has come up from my audience getting ready for this interview is really, it feels insurmountable to some families to say, I've got a whole nother year of this. So as families are looking down the 2020 to 21 school year, and if they have kids at home, what would be one tip that you think any family could install to give them better sense of peace and harmony for the next calendar year?
I think having that open communication is a big piece, and kind of finding one tool, whatever that is, one mindful tool that they can utilize as a family to help sort of center for the day. And that could be, it could be anything. It could be taking 2 minutes of silence. It could be putting on music.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And whatever works for that family. And, trying to stay consistent with it so that it becomes part of their routine. But I think because of all the chaos that we just don't know what's going to happen for this school year, starting off the day grounded is going to be huge for everybody in the entire family, regardless of what's going on.
For the families that you've worked with, that you've seen the most success in instilling, peace and really seeing that radical transformation, what do you attribute some of their success to?
A big piece is, of course, the parents feeling more empowered because they have more tools in their toolbox. They've been given education on sort of how to, I think a lot of it is like the psychosocial development information for parents that, naturally, if you don't study that and you don't, you're not going to know that. Right. So, educating the parents and sort of teaching them about a lot of the social emotional development, I think is a huge piece of it. So when parents have more of an understanding of social emotional development, and kind of how to relate to their children better, I think that in turn creates just overall more harmony and peace, because now the child is starting to feel understood. Now the child feels seen. And then, the tools that the parents are putting into place is now making them feel more calm, because they're not yelling or they're not being reactionary. They're coming from a place of more understanding and compassion.
I think that makes sense. I think that makes sense. I think in our house, a few of the things that were really, really helpful was hearing socially and emotionally how many steps or how many things the child could actually comprehend in their mind at once, which was interesting. Sometimes you're trying to negotiate with this child like they're someone at your office.
Right.
They're not. So that was helpful for me.
Yeah.
It was also how much the tone of your voice and the kind of
your affect.
Yeah, your affect, your face, how much that made a difference. And we did some exercises with that. And I was able to see the same words when I thought I was looking the same made a totally different impression on my child. And then lastly, I thought a really good skill that you teach people about is how to de-escalate a tantrum.
Yeah.
Because there is not enough information on that, especially when your child's getting to the age where people are looking at you like
what the heck?
No longer acceptable.
Right. Yeah. I think a big part too, with being able to de-escalate a tantrum is, I think a lot of times, we automatically think that we have to be with the child or try and help them to come out of it. But I think just letting them know that they're safe and that when they're ready to, talk about it calmly or, and kind of just let them feel it, is really important, because when we if we yell back or, we get upset and we react and we're like, why the heck are you throwing, why are you acting this way? Why are you doing this? Stop doing that. So, when we come at it from that energy, then a lot of times it makes it worse and it just feeds into the situation. So we have to
us in those moments.
Right. Exactly.
Another thing I really took away from all of this is that the majority of times you're really upset at somebody else's bad behavior is because you feel like it's a reflection on you. You're embarrassed.
Right.
You feel like you're not being a good mom. You feel like you're not patient. And it's not having the curiosity of why is this so hard for you? Right. And I found that strategy better than probably all of them, as walking away and waiting till the point where the other person can articulate it. And I use this in all aspects of my life now.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
The other person can articulate what is actually their challenge in the moment.
Right.
It's not about me.
Yep. It's true.
That I need to be the curious watcher, not the invested, arguer in those
exactly
moments.
Yeah. No. And it's true. And I think a lot of it too is control, right? So as parents, I think automatically, and a lot of it is how we were raised ourselves. I'm huge, and you know this, on breaking the cycle, breaking old school parenting, and just, starting fresh and changing the paradigm of parenting, because what worked in the past doesn't work now. We live in a totally different world. So I think that's a really important piece too.
What are some of the kind of old school parenting that you talk about that you think is meant to be broken?
Punishment, hitting, spanking, reprimands. I think, and it's not about like
right there though, because someone's going to be triggered by that, which is
I know, it's fine. They can be triggered.
Yeah, that, I mean, all of us probably over 30 were raised in homes where punishment, discipline, expectations were key. There wasn't a lot of discussion. There are certain things in my house growing up I would never argue against, because it was like law.
Right. Same here.
But you are talking about a new time in this world, and you are actually talking about how in every relationship, whether it's in your romantic one or your parent-child one, if two people can try to understand each other and not go to blows and have a control battle, it will always be happier for all. Is that
right?
What we're looking at? Okay.
Yep.
Talk a little more about that for people that are now maybe open to this idea that punishment isn't the only way forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think I like to look at it as like a natural consequence. So when you set up those expectations, and it can be, again, it can be in a relationship as well. You both come to the table with expectations that you expect in your relationship, right? Like how each person's kind of show up, or like what you accept and what you won't accept, right? It's the same thing in a parent-child relationship. So as the parent, as the adult, you're going to have certain expectations in how you want your house to run. And that could look like sitting down for family dinner for 10 minutes every night. I mean, that's one example. It could look like, you get home from school, you have to do your homework, within the first half hour, and then it's playtime. Whatever works for your family. You have to what I like to encourage parents to do is kind of have that conversation prior and figure out as a team what each of you want to bring to the table. Like, what do you both want to see? What are your goals? And then come together as a team and figure out, okay, if we don't agree on this, where can we meet in the middle? Where can we figure out how this can work for the entire family? So when I say natural consequences, as opposed to like, your child is acting out and, getting frustrated, and, being mean, or, whatever it is. And you're like, if you don't stop acting like that, you're going to your room. You lost your PlayStation. And it's like, it's not a teaching moment. You're just coming at them with frustration naturally, because you're frustrated that they're acting out. Right. But you said it before, it's not about you. That child needs to learn how to handle expectations or rules, or, whatever it is, that the child is upset about. Right. And I think a lot of times parents will give in. And that's when oftentimes I feel like the punishment gets set in, because it's like, okay, well, you didn't listen to me the first 2 times, or I gave in that time. Now I'm just frustrated. Now I'm not going to deal with it anymore. So now I'm going to punish you. I just don't. And the thing is too, is,
it's you can't how well that works though. I mean, I used to have punishments for certain chores.
Right.
And I've since used more of the language of, it actually hurts my feelings when
you don't
take out the trash.
Right.
And if I give my children to say, it would really make me happy, because I, have done what I said I would do today. It would make me happy if you could do that for me by 3 p.m.
Right. There you go. Yep.
Because you also are enabling a little bit of autonomy on
there. Right. Exactly. So you're giving them that independence. Right. Yeah. So it's not right. And it's not, again, it goes back to like the control. So it's not like, if you don't do this, right now, like, you're going to lose X, Y, and Z, or you're going to be punished. It's just, I feel like it's and this might be harsh, but I just feel like it's a tyranny way of kind of like handling a situation. Like, it's just like this aggressive way. And again, like in all relationships, whether it's your partner or your child, like you're not going to get anything done by creating more chaos. And essentially, when you come and if you don't reframe like in that positive way, like you said, it would make me happy. Like, it would, like, I would appreciate it if you would do, like, it sounds so much better than a threat. Like, if you don't do this by then you're going to, it doesn't motivate anybody. I mean, think about it in business.
Continuing action, right? When you're in a fear cycle, it doesn't make anyone want to do better. But when they feel like they're doing things that are bringing other people joy and calm and tranquility to the home, they keep doing it. There's some incentive to continue.
Yes.
And I think our goal, what you said earlier, is to create humans that are self-motivated.
Right.
Don't need the threat of jail or punishment to behave. Yeah. That have that intrinsic motivation inside to say, I want to be a good partner. I want to be a good person. I want to be a good human. I want to be a good contributor in this family. Right. And I think you have to give up a lot of control to get there.
Right.
But the takeaways are incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Because you stop battling.
Right. And again, this is part of like, the parent education and parents really understanding the psychosocial, development of children. And I've worked with so many families and like so many children of all ages. And I just can't tell you how many times you always hear from the child that they feel like they're a bad kid, or they feel stupid, or they feel dumb because of, and again, it's not to make the parents feel bad, but when you are handling situations a certain way and you're treating them a certain way, then a child internalizes that. And I think we just have to be mindful that when we start this at a very young age and we don't change our own patterning, we don't change our own ways of handling behavior, because all forms of communication is behavior. I mean, that goes for all walks of life. It doesn't matter if you're a parent, if it's in business, I mean, anything. So if you look at it from that perspective and you can really like put yourself in that person's shoes and understand like, okay, I don't, this is not the kind of individual I want to create. This is not the kind of energy I want to bring. And sort of, instill in my child, because the reality is, unfortunately, children do internalize these things. And this is why I'll get children that are a little bit older that need that support, because, parents have been doing things a certain way and they're now figuring out, once they've gotten to like those teenage years or later, it's like, holy crap, like this is not like, where do we go wrong? Like something needs to change, because we're at this.
Is there an age that if you're having these challenges in your house, it's best to address them by, or it becomes more difficult? Or is that a doom and gloom prophecy that actually doesn't exist?
I mean, of course, that I'm huge on early childhood, right? I strongly feel that the earlier you catch it and the more changes that you make earlier on, the better off you'll be as an entire, for the child and for the family, because now you're going to live, those years living in much more harmony and peace than you would have if you waited until they turned 11 or 12 years old. So I think every child is different. Some children, they might not display certain behaviors until a certain age. But I got to say, the majority of the parents that come to me that are older, they started seeing it at a young age, and they just didn't, for many reasons, right? One is it's not really like supported to even reach out for support. Parents don't really know where to go. Like, I feel like parent coaching in general has really only been sort of popular or like in demand, if you will. I don't even know exactly for how many years, but it's just not something that, that you necessarily think about right away, I think.
That's an important piece, because we're almost up at time, that I think frames this conversation really well and gives us a chance for people to get in contact with you. The whole reason your career started is because you were working in special education in New York City, and you were working with kids in schools, and parents were saying, I need you at home. Like, you've created change in my child at school in such an amazing way. Do it for me at home. And that is how your career took off, just because people were demanding your services served up in a different way in the home environment.
Right.
So if somebody's listening and they're like, oh my goodness, this is what I need. This is what my home needs. This is what I need to do to survive 2020. How can I get in touch with you?
Yep. So you can go to my website, crueltyfreemamas.com. You can email me. All of the information is on the website. info@crueltyfreemama.com is my email. And I'm actually going to be creating, I haven't figured out just yet. I might do sort of like a package deal or something for families, just like specifically for the school year, just to help kind of get parents sort of on a good starting foot, because I know that there's a lot of anxiety, going on with what the school year is going to look like. But yeah, other than that, if you go to my website, you can reach me on there. I'm on all social media, Instagram, Facebook, same, Cruelty Free Mamas. And yeah, you can just reach out.
I think this is perfect. Everybody is looking for this type of support, or a lot of people are, and you are a great person to reach out to. So Amanda Houle, thank you so much for being with us today. And you have a great rest of the day, and reach out. crueltyfreemama.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Momentum Magnet. We're here every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time to share inspiring comeback stories. We want to hear your reviews and love getting your subscriptions on iTunes and Spotify. For show notes and past episodes, visit momentummagnet.com. I'm Karen Morales, keynote speaker, writer, and founder and CEO of Marketing Magnet, a fast-growing marketing agency for purpose-driven companies. Whether you are a business needing an agency, or if you are looking for weekly tips to get ahead, sign up at marketing-magnet.com to receive our weekly inspiration on getting more in your life and business.